Welcome to Energy Insights, the podcast where we explore the shifts and strategies shaping the energy transition across Asia. I'm your host, Stephen. In today's episode, we go beyond borders. We look at China's growing influence in regional energy systems, finance, and diplomacy, and what it means for Southeast Asia's path to a secure and sustainable future. While much attention is paid to China's domestic emissions and clean tech manufacturing, there is another story playing out across its borders, one of energy investments, cross-border infrastructure, and financial flows that shape how neighboring countries develop their power sectors. To help us unpack this story, we are joined by Ziqun, a junior consultant, climate finance at Perspectives Climate Group. Her work explores climate finance, energy transition, and the role of various financial institutions in aligning with global climate goals. She has a strong focus on China's overseas energy engagement and the implication for developing economies. She holds a master's degree in environmental policy and economics from Peking University, and her insights have helped international organizations, think tanks, and governments navigate a complex space between development finance and sustainability. Hi, it's a pleasure to have you on Energy Insight.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm very happy to be here and contribute to this conversation. The issues you have mentioned are absolutely timely, especially for the Asia Pacific region.
Thank you. Let's start with your work. Could you walk us through your focus at Perspectives Climate Group and how it ties into China's overseas energy policy and finance mechanism to start with?
Yeah, of course. So at Perspectives, we primarily work on aligning international financial flows with climate goals, and we also explore innovative financial instruments to speed up the shift away from carbon-intensive investments. So we investigate how financial flows from major players like China shape energy trajectory in developing countries. And my particular focus is on public finance institutions. So this involves analyzing their financial portfolio, tracking announcements versus project pipelines, and also evaluating whether the financing models enable or obstruct the shift to clean energy. And in China's case, we're looking to export credit agencies like China Exim Bank and others tied to the Belt and Road Initiative, and to assess how recent policy pledges like stop building overseas coal power plants are being operationalized on the ground.
Thank you for the first round of information. So it's just not about tracking the financial per se, the money, the monetary. It's about understanding the power dynamics and policy environments that guide investment decisions.
Yes, exactly. Financing is never neutral, so it reflects broader political and economic interests. And if we want to accelerate a just energy transition, we have to understand and engage with those underlying structures.
Let's move on to the regional energy investment and grid diplomacy. So let's explore how China's role in Southeast Asia, which has changed impact, there has been those changes. Historically, Chinese investments supported coal and large hydro projects. So I'm sure there's been some changes. So what's different so far?
Yeah, that's a good question. For much of the 2000s and 2010s, China's presence in Southeast Asia's energy sector focused on large-scale fossil fuel infrastructure and often tied to concessional loans or EPC contracts. But in the last few years, we've seen a major rebalancing. While the old projects haven't vanished, the new money and activity are shifting towards clean energy, for example, solar, wind, and battery storage. And even more importantly, China is now a key player in upgrading and connecting the region's power grids. So, for example, in 2023, a consortium of Chinese banks and companies have cooperated with Indonesia's state utility PLN to push forward smart grid development and also renewable projects. And also, cross border electricity trade has emerged as another priority. For instance, China is supporting transmission projects in Laos and Vietnam that are part of the broader regional interconnection scheme. And this will allow surplus hydropower or renewables to flow between countries, and that can improve energy reliability and lowering costs.
So that is part of what is called grid diplomacy. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. So, grid diplomacy is about not just building physical infrastructure, but also political relationships. It's a way for China to demonstrate leadership and cooperation while also deepening its regional footprint. But I think the grid diplomacy also opens up opportunities for mutual benefits if structured equitably. And these interconnections can help Southeast Asian countries to accelerate their clean energy transitions without compromising energy security.
That's great to hear. Let's move on to export finance and the transition. So the mechanism, let's talk more about that. Behind all of this export finance and its role in shaping energy future, why is this area so critical, and why does it often fly under the radar?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So, export finance tends to operate in the background, although it has an outsized influence around the world. So, think of export credit agencies or ECAs as financial institutions backed by governments. And their job is to improve the competitiveness of domestic companies to do business and investment abroad. And they do this by providing tools and favorable terms like low interest loans, insurance coverage, and sovereign guarantees. And essentially, they decide which projects or what types of projects can get this green light by making them financially viable. And historically, ECAs from G20 countries, including China, have been the largest public funders of fossil fuels globally, even more than multilateral development banks. So they favored fossil fuel because fossil fuels were seen as reliable and profitable investments and also speaks to energy security issues. But today, the economic cases for renewables is much stronger, and the climate imperative is urgent. And in this context, China has made some progress, especially with its 2021 overseas coal pledge. But the reality is actually nuanced with some policy loopholes. For example, projects approved before 2021 are still under constructions. We're speaking coal here. And financing continues for captive coal power plants, especially in countries like Indonesia. And we also see export finance still flowing to gas infrastructure and LNG terminals, particularly in countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Indonesia. So that's why expanding the financing restrictions to include all fossil fuel is really important now, as well as embedding the just energy transition principles into the whole financial system.
So it's not just about stopping unconstructive, let's say, bad projects. It's about creating the systems that enable good ones, can we say?
Exactly. We need to build enabling environments, policy, finance, technical capacity, and skilled manpower. That will allow clean energy projects to really flourish at scale. And that's also where public finance can lead by example.
Thank you. So let's move on to what can be the opportunities and lesson, especially for the region such as Southeast Asia. What sort of opportunity is this to engage, especially with China, constructively on energy? And then what lessons should the region keep in mind moving forward?
Yeah, I think the first opportunity is the localization of clean energy industries. So instead of Southeast Asian countries just buying clean technology from China, Chinese companies are now starting to build factories in this region. For example, in Indonesia, the Chinese solar giant Longji has started to build a PV panel factory. And this kind of value chain wise development can also create jobs, support local talent development, and catalyze local green capital. So I think localization of these green industries would be one of the most promising opportunities for Southeast Asia region. And the second point I want to mention is distributed energy projects. So, China has been emphasizing this small and beautiful approach for many years, and I think this approach is a perfect match for distributed energy projects. For example, community solar, microgrids, and mini grids. They're also a way to solve the last mile problem of energy access, especially in remote areas in Southeast Asian countries. And another opportunity I want to highlight is to set clear sustainability standards. So, Southeast Asian governments can actually require stronger environmental, social, and government thresholds, or ESG, for Chinese project developers. And China could also raise a bar for overseas investment governance from domestic policies. And this kind of action can also push all partners, including Chinese financiers, to innovate within those boundaries. And finally, the lesson I would say is about transparency. So, public dialogues, civil society engagement, and also open procurement process can really help ensure energy investments to serve long-term public interests, not just short-term gains.
So we can see the call to actions being becoming powerful. Also, the agency accountability becoming the key to unlock this.
Yes, absolutely. I think Southeast Asia and also other developing countries are never just a passive recipient. They have a vital role to play in shaping what kind of energy future they want. And this also includes deciding how and when to partner with China and also other strong partners.
Thank you for the comprehensions about this. And then, so since we already are in the future, but we still have to look forward. Um, so what in your opinion is the most promising area of China, Southeast Asia energy cooperation per se?
Yes, I think also speaks to my kind of expertise. I would say the climate finance space is maturing regarding energy cooperation. So the old model of relying solely on public finance is fading, and the future is more about using limited public money to unlock much larger pools of private investment. And for energy transition, this will specifically means to use creative tools like green bonds and blended finance where development banks and private investors can team up on projects. And China actually has a massive green bond market, and its institutions are gaining experience currently. So, if Southeast Asian countries clearly state their needs, especially financing needs, they can bring China to the table as a key partner in funding the next wave of clean energy.
Thank you. So as your final message for young professional entrepreneurs and those who are in the innovations working for climate finance, what will be your the takeaway of this podcast? Also, personal message to them.
Yes, I think my message would be the architect. So for all of the peer young professionals, whether you're working in policy, finance, engineering, or advocacy, you're not just taking a job. You're actually behind being handed the blueprint to our energy future. And don't just learn how the old climate action systems works in order to fit in. We should learn its weaknesses so we can redesign it. And we're building more than clean energy. We're actually building a more resilient future for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tijuan, for very thoughtful conversations and sharing with us. And then the message, the takeaways, the insight definitely bring clarity to a more complex space, and your work continues to inspire more and more meaningful actions. To our listeners today, China's regional energy influence is definitely growing, but how it unfolds would depend just as much on Southeast Asia's leadership. Let's keep asking the right questions, fostering transparency, and building cross border partnership that center people, resilience, and justice. Thank you for tuning in today's episode. If you find this episode insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on the latest in the energy transition. For more in-depth analysis and updates, visit our website at energytracker.asia. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on Energy Insights. Until next time, and this has been Beyond Borders.